Good morning, friends. Myself, Vegaseni, Associate Dean, ICFA Tech, the ICFA University, Jaipur. Once again, we are with our expert, who is from the IBM. Mr. Abhyuday received his BA LLB from the West Bengal National University of Judicial Sciences, Kolkata. He is currently serving as DGM for Business Development and Relationship Management for IBM Systems University Initiative at IBM India and South Asia. He had about a decade of experience with the IT industry and enjoying his sixth year with IBM. Working in the field of education domain for the last 3 years at IBM, Abhyuday has held various cross-functional profiles, which includes attorney with the law department, product management, business development, and technical sales. In his current role, he is responsible for executing IBM strategic education initiatives in the education domain, where he works very closely with the universities across South Asia under the growth markets. So we welcome you, Mr. Abhyuday Singh Chauhan, in our talk show. Dr. Rajesh Kothari, our Honorable President, the ex-Dean Director of R.A. Podar Institute of Management. He is with us. I request Honorable President, sir, to formally welcome Mr. Abhyuday Singh Chauhan. Sir.
Thank you, Arunji. I, on my behalf and behalf of ICFA University and ICFA Tech, Abhyuday ji, we welcome you to this conversation. In fact, I was keen to talk to someone from IBM as well. The reason is very simple. Only last month, I addressed a conference organized by Microsoft. And this conference was again the educations and the COVID, etc. So I said, where is IBM now? Because when we think of a computer, I think first name that comes to my mind is IBM only. And I believe that the IBM has done a great to us so far. Computing is concerned in the country as well as in the world as well. Now, there is two things. One is the classroom and second is the real life. Clear? In the classroom, I think we are so safe, protected, and we feel that nothing is going to happen to us, nothing is going to happen against us. But the real life is something different one. So I always tell my students that you have to be in the classroom of their life, not the classroom which is protected for walls as such. So we'd like to listen to you, how a young student who is trying to acquire education to enter the real life. The real life could be entrepreneurs, real life could be working in an organization, real life could be maybe doing something of his own, and with such a diverse background of yours, you have done say law and you're handling this tech company. So how did you breach this distance as well from a core computing company, having a person having law knowledge and still doing a profile? I thought being law, you must be looking after their legal affairs, but I'm happy to learn you are looking more than what an MBA can do, right? So you're looking after business development, and more importantly, you talk about customer relationship. I think, I personally feel I have worked for more than 40 years. My simple things is in the life, what matters: connection, connectivity, communication, and context. If these four are in sync, you can turn out to be fast moving and you can step up the ladder faster than anything else. At ICFA University, Jaipur, and especially ICFA Tech, we intend to organize such kind of discourse from the person of your eminence so that generation to come should stand benefited out of your experience. And the experience is something that you have to earn. I mean, we can't buy from the market one. अक्सर मैं दुनिया सबको एक बात कहता हूँ, विद्यार्थियों की बात कहता हूँ, दुनिया किताब है एंड जमाना उस्ताद है. दुनिया किताब है और जमाना उस्ताद है. सो जो जमाने की जो उस्तादगिरी है वो आप क्लासरूम में नहीं सीख सकते, वो आपको दुनिया ही सिखाती है आपको. You trust somebody and you feel cheated, right? So this is what is this one, and therefore we always say an experience is worth millions and billions and trillion. Abhyuday ji, my simple submission and request would be, जयपुर के लिए वक्त निकालिए, ICFA यूनिवर्सिटी आपकी है, सपोर्ट करिए. हो सकता है our scale may not be so big, but desire to grow fast and desire to excel and desire to be distinct from others is indeed deep-rooted with us. I welcome you, and hopefully, I'm sure your discourse will change the life of few of my students. And I think this is the success of anything. And Arun Saniji is doing such a great job. He always does something distinct from others. Thank you. Welcome to the ICFA University Jaipur with understanding and unwritten promise from you. Whenever you get a time, when you happen to fly, whenever to be this part of the country, I request you, please do come, do bless, do support. After all, we need to grow together. Thank you.
Morning,
Thank
Dr.
you, sir. Thank you
Kothari,
very
and
much, sir.
thank you so much for such an incredibly welcoming note. I am very, very excited to be here, and God willing, we will all be meeting each other soon after this. The pandemic is managed. I don't think it's getting over anytime soon, but it should be getting managed sometime soon. And I will 100% make it a point to come visit all of you at the wonderful Jaipur campus at the earliest. So thank you so much for welcoming me. I will happily share parts of my own journey from National Law School to IBM's law department as an attorney to the education sector, which has always been close to my heart as a leader for India. And I will also be very happy to share with you what is our take on education sector and how we anticipate things will turn out post the COVID rigmarole. So, Dr. Saini and Dr. Kothari, thank you so much for your welcome note. Over to you.
Thank you, Abhidayji. Now, please, yeah, so over to you. Yeah, we can start.
All right, sir. I think, we should start the presentation. All right.
Yeah.
Sir, is my screen visible to you? Saini, sir? Saini, sir, are you able to see my screen?
It's visible.
I think it should be visible. Sir, is it visible?
It's visible. It's visible.
Okay. Great. ठीक है. So, sir, we'll start our discussion with the note that currently the coronavirus is making many of our older predictions, our older models, and the older thought redundant. It used to be that, especially in low tech sectors, you could clearly visualize which way the future will go because they were not very disruptive. But now every sector is thoroughly disrupted. And from the education sector's point of view, let me take you on a journey to understanding some of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So in step one, let us just consider what we knew as of December 2019, before the coronavirus idea had sort of insinuated itself into all of our thoughts. There were a few mega trends that everybody was pretty clear about, that everybody was anticipating. There were a few technologies that everybody was anticipating. And as you can see on the slide, whether it be AR or human machine interface, IoT, all these things are something that fairly well anticipated. Similarly, on the trend side, you can see that both urbanization and social change were well anticipated, understood. Food shortages or resource scarcity were also anticipated. And the global economic power shift is well underway now. I think, especially if you look at the last 2 weeks, the world is no longer unipolar, and those things are pretty clear to us. So this is the context that I would like you to keep in mind for the rest of the presentation. That if somebody had asked any of us, Dr. Kothari, Mr. Saini, or me, or anybody else, what are the main sort of things to keep our eye on as the year progresses, as 2020 progresses, we would have said, please keep an eye on Education 4.0, relying on AR, IoT, lots of data science, big data analysis, etc. And please watch for disruptive breakthroughs, etc. But with that, what other things we would have known are in the line of how certain specific fields of our workplace are being disrupted, right? As you can see, uh, this chart, each of these charts shows the split in the activity between humans and software in specific job tasks. So let's say administration is one job task. Communicating, as Dr. Kothari very correctly said, communication is one of the four pillars that you have to get right. So you can see in some of these uh, uh, spaces, humans are still extremely dominant. One is rational decision making. Reasoning, critical reasoning, rational decision making are still largely human domain, right? On the other hand, things like data processing or data entry or simply searching for indexed information, these are very machine heavy already, and we are expecting to see them get more machine heavy even as close as in next 4 years. Between 2018 and 2022, it is anticipated that, for example, data processing will become almost 70% machine driven. In searching for information will be done more than half the times in half the instances by a machine. So humans who are doing that as part of their job are now looking at the end of the barrel where sooner than later they will experience some of the they should anticipate that they will experience some of the downsides or the negative effects of more and more machine integration into our lives, which is one of them is job loss, right? So these are some of the skills that technology is disrupting, right? Uh, in the same vein of discussing skills, I would like to tag skills to job roles like application developer, junior software developer, all of these job roles that are industry standard. I'd like to discuss some of these job roles and the skills that they require, which are being made redundant or more important in the new age, right? This is as true today as it was pre-COVID. COVID has not changed this. So this is the perspective I'd like you to keep. Stable roles are like university and higher education teacher. This role is not going anywhere. As more and more people are being brought into the ambit of higher education, the skilled workforce is bulging. Uh, People who can train other people to do high level thinking, high level execution, high level jobs are going to be as essential as ever. They are not going anywhere, right? Similarly, information security analysis or engineers of various kinds, even for those technologies or those things which are being phased out, like non-renewable energy, even then, we anticipate that energy and petroleum engineers, right, or operators of petroleum and natural gas refining plants, they will be here for some time. These are stable roles. Of course, highly stable roles are software engineers, data analysts, and scientists, right? Along with this, there are new roles that are being created every day. These new roles are typically very high skill roles. As we see, what happens is amongst the job roles, the ones which have lesser skill requirements are the ones that get sheared away. The new ones that are created have even more skills required. So the world is generally moving in a herd from lesser focused and calibrated job skills to more calibrated job skills. This is a trend that has not stopped in the last 50 plus years and will not be stopping in the next many decades. We can see that clearly. Jobs that were lower specialized are eventually going away. The higher specialized jobs are staying, and the new jobs that are coming are even higher specialized. So we are thinning out the herd for less specialized jobs. So now you can see that whether it be process automation specialists or UX and UI designers or robotics specialists or systems design specialists, These are the new roles that are being created. And if you look at the redundant roles, like I pointed to you, these are all those roles which have skills that machines can easily take over and or lower skills. So it can be data entry, or it can be very simple audit. Of course, higher level audit involves rational decision making, but simple analysts or auditors who only go through data are quickly being replaced. And even lawyers, right? We have seen there is IBM itself has a tool that does legal work, such as basic contract review, much faster. Apparently, in the latest trials, it turned out to be 27 times faster than a well qualified human lawyer. So you can see lawyers on the list here too. So these are the roles that are going to become redundant. So between these three lists, what I want you to remember is that the stable roles are the high skill roles, the new skills are the high skill roles, the redundant roles are the low skill roles. So we are moving towards the higher skilled world, right? On a macro level, please understand that while existing roles will decrease and some people will lose jobs, almost twice of that, two times that number, we are going to anticipate an increase in roles that the industry will potentially have for well qualified students to take up, right? Now, I also want to look a little beyond 2022. For the last two slides, we looked at 2022 disruption, right? Now I want to look at 2030. From a 2030 forecasting perspective, uh, we anticipate that there is massive talent crunch caused by two reasons. One is that commerce is growing at an ever accelerating rate. The world's GDP has only increased over the last 50 years. Also, population is growing in non-linear ways. There are many advanced developed countries where populations are falling, and there are many other countries where populations are relatively stable, but education is not prioritized. So countries where there is both a demographic dividend, which is to be had in terms of the number of qualified people, and then those qualified people, how skilled they are. Those countries which have this demographic dividend are expected to harvest it to greater and greater extent. So as you will see, I've highlighted below, this is a huge opportunity for the only sector that is 100% committed and invested in developing the talent for tomorrow, more than any other sector. At the same level as our farmers and our soldiers are our teachers, who are the single point at which we can invest further to create more talent for tomorrow. It is not useful to have more actors. It is not useful to have more sports persons. As useful it is to have more teachers, because each of those teachers represents 10, 20, 30, or 100 skilled students who tomorrow will enter the workforce and contribute to the country, right? More than any other sector, this is an opportunity that we see, that I deal with on a daily basis, multiple universities and institutes, where we are trying our best to get to a point where this demographic dividend, right, it's potentially a $8.5 trillion surplus that any country which has the number of people, right, the talent can garner. That same talent that this country has engendered domestically will spread out across the world, because globalization has made it easy for us to work anywhere, anytime. We can work in the US sitting in the US, we can work in the US sitting in India, we can work anywhere, right? And whatever arbitrage there is to be had from talent shortage will be taken home by countries like India, which have the rare combination of surplus manpower and skilled manpower, right? So this is a 2030 scenario we are visiting, right? Quick reality check on COVID-19 cases. As you can see, the first case was about 8 months ago now, and the most recent data for today are that we are at almost 10 million cases, right, across 200 countries. So now we have seen the typical context that the industry was in, that the industry was facing prior to any news of this pandemic or this outbreak. These were the forecasts we all had. These were the anticipations that we all had. Now let us look at how they have changed during the coronavirus outbreak, during these last years, right? So, first thing that I want to focus on is, as you can see from the highlighted section below, there is a remarkable degree of strength and resilience in our institution. There is no doubt about this that our institutions are proving to be way stronger and way more resilient than we had expected. Many people expected that, Bill Gates has been warning about a pandemic since 2015, but all the associated projections were that the world would come to a grinding halt. There would be a complete standstill of activity, there would be complete chaos, and there would be complete confusion. But please see this chart. This chart is a very simple 1 month long data chart. That's it, right? It's a We got this from UNESCO, which is a very reliable source of information, and we ourselves were extremely surprised at how clear and how stark it is that the uh, people enrolled in the global education sector have not seen any complication, shortfall, anything, right, in COVID 19. On the other hand, people have taken the opportunity, then the time that they have been given, many of them, by being allowed to be at home, to further enroll themselves in any possible source of education. It is amazing to us that uh, while we are all busy and caught up in our lives, uh, maybe pursuing commercial activities or otherwise caught up, we may have understated the importance of education. But at the first possible opportunity, as soon as we had the chance, many people have shown that they deeply care about education and are very invested in upgrading their skills and upgrading their education at the first possible opportunity. So this represents Dr. Wadhari and everybody else at senior management position with ICFI. This represents a very large opportunity that was invisible before this, because the number of people who were enrolling in all levels of education, right, primary up to tertiary, has increased so much that as educators, we should take both pride in the fact that our sector is considered so valuable by so many people, 1.38 billion actually, right? And also take heart from the fact that they are all relying on us to do the right kind of job and give them the skills they want, right? So, moving to my next slide, while the world has been locked down and then opened and then locked down again in many places and countries and cities, there are some places that have not stopped working. And these are the research institutes, including the IITs, including AIMS, and many other institutes in India, right? Whether the projects they are doing are for reducing the cost of ventilators, or they are trying to result in better testing with more ease of access, more reliability. But they have been working non-stop. But still, it stands to our discredit that other institutes across the world, whether they be Oxford or wherever else, have done far more and garnered far more appreciation and credit for their efforts in the pandemic. So while it is important to recognize the efforts of our institutions, we should while it is true that we have done a lot, it is surprising that we could not translate into more results, into more innovation, and especially into more benefit for both the community nearby and humanity at large. Hi, thanks so much for adding me back, Mr. Seni. I'm going to continue my presentation from where we were. Would request somebody to please confirm that we were on slide 10, so that I'm sure that we all saw that bit before I move on to slide 11.
Yeah. You are audible.
And sir, I was on slide 10 last. This one, correct?
Just a minute.
I am. This is the
We are
last
sorry
slide
for
that
the
we saw.
interruption. We are sorry for. Yeah. Yeah. Please continue. Please continue.
Okay, so so we'll continue from slide 10, and I just discussed that as per the CRISIL ratings on sectors at risk across all the corporate sectors, uh, we have found out that most of the sectors at risk are manufacturing or travel related, right? The education sector is not at all considered to be at large long-term risk from COVID-19, nor is the IT sector considered at large long-term risk. One of the reasons is that both of these sectors are extremely physical location independent, unlike, say, travel and hospitality. And both of these sectors rely on the dissemination of information more than anything else, right? So even while human beings cannot interact with each other in public or go out and take the risk of infection, information has no such barriers. Information can flow freely. Thankfully, our education sector is largely dependent on only that, which is information and knowledge being, you know, flowing from teachers to students. So, education sector is not at all considered high risk in this climate. Additionally, please see from the first point that education sector has typically run counter cyclical to the market. What this means is that when the market is going up, then engaging in commercial activity may be more viable because every participant in the market is making more money. But when the market is going down, when there is not much money to be made in the market, for many actors in the overall scheme, it makes more sense to take a break from participating in the market, upgrade their skills, and then re-enter the market at a later point when it is back up and charge a premium on their additional skills. So market is down today for, let's say, 10 months. In these 10 months, if I increase my skills so that I am now eligible for a additional job role that I was not eligible for because of my lack of skill, and I re-enter the market 10 months later and charge a premium for this new job role that I can now do, that's a much better investment of your time in terms of remuneration than just trying to be in the market while it is going down. So education sector is counter cyclical. When the market goes down, education sector goes up, right? So that is one very important thing for all the management to keep in mind. Secondly, for students' perspective, I would like to say directly to all the students that it is very important to choose our our academic institutions and tie-ups very carefully, because in times of uncertainty, what manages to retain its value is the tried and tested, and that is why when things are looking tough, the well-known brand names in any sector, right? Like in education sector, let's say IIT, the enrollments there or the jobs there will typically not dry up. It might be that those institutes which are relatively unknown or which are not branded as well might suffer from low student intake, low recruiter engagement. But institutes that are very, very well branded, like our ICFA institutes, of course, they will not suffer from anything like low student intake or recruiter lack of engagement, because, like we said, we showed education is still critically required, and there are many, many jobs, especially in IT, which need to be done even more critically than before, right? So we do not anticipate for well-branded institutes like ICFI to have too much challenge in post-COVID world, right? So let's move on to next slide. And now we will discuss what we can do as individuals, as students, and as institutes, as ICFI, to win in the new reality, in the new world, right? So I really, really like this quote, and I put it in my slide. The greatest danger in tough times like this one is not the complication of COVID-19 or anything like that, but it is to act on yesterday's logic, which was applicable in the pre-COVID world, but is not applicable now. If we don't abandon that old logic and adopt the new logic, then we are putting ourselves in the greatest danger. And let me give you a few examples how, right? So, I would like to discuss what are the challenges that Dr. Kothari's team is probably looking at from what we anticipate, right? And please feel free, Dr. Kothari and the whole team. I know you are there on the live chat. Please feel free to ask any questions or interrupt me at any time. I am very happy to take any questions and exchange any ideas with you, right? So this is a completely interactive session. I have been non-stop going on for about 35 minutes now. I would love it if there was a question or insight anybody wanted to share. So we will quickly come to the challenges being faced, and let's see some of the key ones. So please look at point number 3, which talks about parents' willingness to send their children to now far-off locations for education. In India, it's a common trend that students will typically leave their hometown for the first time for long periods for college. For myself, that was the case as well. I went from Delhi to Calcutta to study at the National Law School, and that was my first time being away from home for 6 months at a whole semester, right? So currently, it is anticipated that those institutes which have multiple branches at multiple places will be able to tap in the best number of students and the best quality of students, because those students who would have traveled for good education to length across the length and breadth of the country are now going to want to study close to home, where there is more control about health and hygiene than somewhere completely far away from them. This is another area where institutes like ICFI, with, if I'm not wrong, 11 different campuses, or maybe even more. Please correct me, Saini sir, if I got the number wrong. 11, I think. Institutes like ICFI with so many campuses are going to do very well, right? Students at Jaipur would prefer to be in Jaipur. Students in Tripura will prefer to be in Tripura. It's very good that we have multiple campuses, right? Please also look at point number, I think it's 6, managing the shorter and tougher runway for admissions, academics, and placement. I'm sure the final year students are extremely worried about placements in the day zero time. Those who have just completed their third year, typically they would have had day zero if not for COVID-19, but they would have missed it and are worried now. So we have to live in the new world where there is a much shorter runway. We can't have processes stretching over 6 months. Admissions are going on from April or May all the way to September. Placement is going on across a year from day zero till the last year of college. So we have to adopt new practices to adapt to the new world, right? And one key thing that is happening is that we are seeing a lot of people who will have to go to the entrepreneurship route because jobs are less. This might be painful in the short term, but we expect a great return for the country and for the community in the long term, right? So, and the last point is similar to what I said earlier, where the weaker institutes will be forced to accept reduced rates of admission, reduced rate of placement, but the strong and branded institutes will only gain in the market share. They will not reduce, they will gain additional market share, right? Now coming to what we can consider a formula for our educational institute to win in the new era, right? And let's take a look point by point. It is clear to everyone that online and blended learning is the future. No, people might have been arguing against it in the past, but nobody is arguing right now that online education is not the future, because if not for online education, none of our students would have studied a single word in the last 4 or 5 months. So online education needs to be adopted. Blending learning needs to be adopted. These are exceptional tools. They are not here to replace classroom time. They are not here to substitute the teachers. They are here to allow them one more tool. The benefit of the best teacher's expertise will be shared and reshared multiple times between students. And those are the teachers that will thrive in the new environment, right? Now, second point is around time management for the students. There is a lot of learning that can be channeled via online mechanism, but it has to be structured correctly, and that's another challenge we have to overcome. Uh, for point number 3, these are some general principles which our students have always been taught to develop and should be taught to develop even more now, especially critical thinking and problem solving. Those are skills that machines are not good at, and in this machine learning era, it is important that individual humans who want to retain the best jobs and not have any risk of being downsized or their jobs being automated continue to do roles which involve both of those components: critical thinking, problem solving, right? Please come to the next point. This is especially true from a pedagogical perspective for the teacher, that in the new reality, online learning brings to us a huge advantage in terms of how we are assessing the student. Whether we want to be just like the old time normative, or we want to be ipsative and formative in the new time, we can anticipate a lot about a student's learning patterns, his strengths and weaknesses when we have the data about how he studies and how he performs on online exams, on blended learning courses, and we should be looking to use that, right? Uh, we will also come to admissions related new formula for the admissions team. I don't know if anybody is there, but I will request Dr. Kothari and Mr. Saini to syndicate this to the ADCOM, because I'm sure that they are highly stressed because they have a very difficult job in the upcoming academic year. And some things that I think we should remember are: first point, very critical, meltdowns in the market have typically always increased the enrollment in higher education across history, right? Students will prefer to study much closer to home, even if the institution is that they want to go to is far, and they would have preferred to go to a different place. They will now be forced to study much closer to home, which means each campus will have a wide catchment area of students who live nearby, right? It is also important that we prove to be well branded, proven institutions which can be relied upon and trusted upon in a time of such great uncertainty. No parents will be interested in sending their students, their children, to a far off place which is not well branded or well known in the market. Right? Very important to position ourselves as very reliable, trustworthy, and branded in this time. Without that, our ability to attract students will not depend on our fees that much. Typically, for education institutions, fees becomes a big point of competition, and driving down the fees generally means higher enrollment. But we expect that this year, the market will be less price elastic. The market will be less sensitive to the price point specifically, and more sensitive to the branding and the image and reliability of the institute, right? Now, there are many other problems that the ADCOM will have to consider. One is that those typical counseling sessions where all the students will come to the campus and there will be face-to-face interaction, all that is gone, all that is over. We have to rely on other ways to discuss with the students what their aspirations are and how we can fulfill their aspirations. And we have to, using those media, engage with the students and secure enrollments in our institution, right? Please also consider for our marketing and communication with the entire world at large and students in specific. There are many skills that we require to have, whether it be sentiment analysis or an SSOB analysis, or it be the fact that our communication has to be highly precise. It has to be differentiated depending on who we are talking to, and we have to keep digital first. That is an undeniable fact of the future. Many institutions have already started working on AR and VR based campus tours, on ensuring that students get a feel of the campus without having to come, because that's not possible. Digital first look and digital interaction between alumni or existing students and new students, prospective candidates, very important, creates a sense of direct connection. As Dr. Kothari said in the discussion, that connection and context, both extremely important. We need to give the students the feel of having visited the campus, met the students, and develop their own connection with the institute without having to make them visit the institute. That's highly important. And we need to now change both our skills that we take for granted in as critical to the admissions process in the admission team, and we need to change our incentives for the agents and actors who are involved in getting us the enrollment, right? We also need to ensure that to maintain the highest student quality from the limited catchment area available nearby to the campus only, we have to have a refer a scholar program. Every time we get a good student, it is important to have that student translate into another good student, right, with refer a scholar. And whether it requires a fee change or a structuring of other incentives, that can be discussed, right? Now I'm coming to close to the end of my program, of my presentation. So again, any questions, I am more than happy. Else, I will move on to the next slide. Okay, so please all, yeah.
क्वेश्चन आंसर हम लोग लास्ट में डिस्कस करेंगे
Okay.
आफ्टर योर
So I'll
प्रेजेंटेशन.
finish. Okay. I'll finish the presentation first. So please also see that for us, not only our basic needs such as teleconferencing and basic infrastructure around how our boardrooms, etc., are structured, but also advanced software and infrastructure like online counseling platforms for conducting advanced webinars for more than 1,000 students, with two-way interaction, more platforms for the students to organically engage in peer-to-peer learning, because that is one of the things that universities are extremely adept at managing in the past, creating environments for students to fire each other's creativity, each other's talent, and each other's ability. That is now reduced because we cannot put them together in the same place. So finding ways to have a platform which allows that same amount of student interaction is highly important, not just video, but fully interactive. These are the things that will comprise of the next generation's infrastructure. Having old servers, old tools where there is a buggy application that can only support 100 students, all that is in the past. We now need to move to the future, right? So that is some thoughts on the infrastructure that we should be acquiring. And now I'll just quickly talk about the IBM Innovation Center for Education, which I represent. I don't want to make this session about our offerings or our products. That can come at a later time when we are engaging with Dr. Kothari's team more directly. I'm aware that there are students and teachers, apart from management, also involved. I'll just restrict myself to one slide where I will simply highlight to you that the design thinking behind the courses is to make the students industry ready, with the right skills, not just like Dr. Kothari said, not just classroom of safety, but classroom of the world. जो किताब नहीं है और उस्ताद है, right? So high focus on skill development and industry readiness. Not just somebody who can get a job and sit on the bench, but somebody who is deployed 1 week after joining the company. After the orientation is done, he is immediately deployable. Similarly, we focus on pedagogy a lot. We are aware that in the current world, we have had normative pedagogy and assessment. It is time to move towards iterative. It is time to move towards more personalized. And it is time to move towards using the medium of the future. And the most important factor is the outcome of the course, which is significantly enhanced employability. We support on internships, projects, and real world application of those skills for either government projects or industry projects, so that the students are highly employable at the end. And with this, I come to my last slide. We are the Innovation Center for Education, as I said. We shall be happy to share further inputs with Dr. Kothari's team. But before I reach out to you again, I would request Mr. Saini to kindly send me an email after having an internal discussion with the entire planning and strategic vision team of ICFI Jaipur, the entire team that is here on the call or who will see a recording, and share with us your strategic vision. What are your top 3 challenges, and what is your plan, and how can we enable you or help you in any way, right? So with that, I think my presentation is over, and I would heartily welcome all your feedback, all your input, all your engagement.
It was a really interesting session. So now I invite the students. So first, Vignesh. Vignesh. Vignesh, your mic is mute. I think there is some issue with the connectivity. Now, Dhruv.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Dhruv. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Sir, my question is, what do you think about things should done by Education Institute since the pandemic is going, like reopening of Education Institute and all? What things should be done by there?
Okay, thanks for your question, Dhruv. As we touched upon at various points in my presentation, let me give you a consolidated view, just a 30-second look at it. Firstly, I think education institutes, differing from students who will act in their own risk-averse ways, need to make sure that all the students around the campus are aware of a well-branded, well-trusted, reliable institute being present there. Additionally, the students need to be provided the latest and greatest infrastructure. That's always a fact. So like I pointed out, the new age infrastructure is more about tools to collaborate for students, not just those old-timer technologies and old-timer infrastructure, which was physically useful but digitally useless. We have to move toward infrastructure which is useful digitally as well. And most importantly, I think the education institutes need to shift their teaching and pedagogy towards a way of assessment and dissemination of knowledge, which is much more in tune with the new reality of students being highly distributed, being digitally connected, and being assessed not in classrooms and exam centers, but over long-term interaction and contribution to their class. So I hope that answers your question, Dhruv.
Vignesh, now it's your turn. Vignesh, I think there is some connectivity issue. some connectivity issues with Vignesh. एक बच्चों का जनरल क्वेश्चन है रिगार्डिंग दैट कैरियर अपॉर्चुनिटीज आफ्टर द पैंडेमिक. Most of the students are basically in the dilemma. They are under a lot of stress, especially who are going to pass out in 2020. So, any your view on that?
Sir, really good question, and I'm going to answer that. I also want to draw your attention to the live comments where Mr. Mahesh Joshi has asked a question. So we will answer that next. सैनी सर,
हाँ जी, प्लीज.
आपने महेश जोशी सर का कमेंट देखा क्या?
Just a minute. Actually, these are the running comments.
हाँ, no problem. So पहले आपका क्वेश्चन आंसर करते हैं. Sir, like we said, for the last 50 years there is a trend which will get further accelerated. जो जॉब बाहर निकल जाते हैं इंडस्ट्री से वो लो स्किल वाले होते हैं. डेटा एंट्री, बीच में इंडिया में बीपीओ रेवोल्यूशन आया था, where there were a lot of call centers and a lot of staff involved in that. That is now gone to Bangladesh and other low skill countries, right? So what you will see is that low skill jobs might be temporary, might be somewhat more permanent feeling, but over time the high skill jobs always increase and the low skill jobs are always automated. So whether it be data science, whether it be cybersecurity, whether it be cloud deployment and migration, these jobs, these skills are going to be relevant for a long time. We don't expect that those jobs or skills will go away anytime soon, but yes, much more basic jobs which require less critical thinking, less problem solving, such as those focused on iterative testing, etc., those are at risk. Maybe by 2022 they will be decreased, but by 2030 they will be gone. There will be zero jobs like that. So we have to become experts on those skills which are relevant to the next decade, not those skills which have passed with the previous decade. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, there is another question from Ms. Priya
I
Patnaik.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a really good question from Ms. Patnaik, and I would like to answer this in two ways. Firstly, I'd like to flip the question and ask that do we know for a fact that there are more people who cannot access online education of their choice than offline education of their choice? And the answer is that more people can access online education than were able to access offline education till now. Yes, there are some people who will not have access, but those same people typically did not have access to a university in their neighborhood either, right? And if not for online education, offline education would have come to a completely grinding halt in the last 4 months. Because as you know, sir, no educational institution has been allowed to open if we could not do such webinars that we are doing now, that you have organized. If we could not do online education right now, all the students would be sitting at home without any education being given to them, right? So that is very important. And secondly, I think a shift to online education is very viable because the objective is never to replace offline education. The objective is to supplement offline education. Objective is to make sure that while students are either prevented from attending it, or even if they are able to attend it, they have much more opportunity to interact and learn without needing to consume the time that it takes to be physically present at a location, right? It is completely feasible to transfer large amounts of data and information across the digital infrastructure to make sure that a student who wants to learn one course from, say, Harvard, one course from IIT, and one course from ICFI is able to do that instead of having to choose between the three. How would it be possible for students from different ICFI campuses to get the benefit of the teachers at each other's campus without this? If you're in Jaipur campus, how do you learn some course from a mechanical teacher from a engineering professor in Tripura campus? Only with the help of online education. So I think online education is a good way to supplement our offline education and we should be highly optimistic and highly focused on it. Sir, I think Vignesh wants to ask a question.
Sir, am I audible?
It's kind of broken, but let's try. Go ahead, Vignesh.
All right, sir. Good morning, first of all. Well, always something big there. We always have new types of job opportunities coming to the market. Like anything we have something new for jobs, career options. What types of jobs and career options we can expect after the COVID-19?
Vignesh, so sorry, your question was very, very broken up. Could you either repeat it or maybe write it down as a text message and we can read and answer?
So we have another question from Mr. Mahesh Joshi. His question is, how long should be online session, size of the batch to keep it productive? I think you were talking about this question.
Yeah, we had seen Mr. Joshi's comment at 11:53. Thanks for coming back with your question, sir. Really good question. I think the jury is out on what is the ideal batch size or the ideal duration. I think what we do know is that more than around an hour 15 minutes becomes difficult for students to retain focus. I also think that we need to strongly respect the boundaries that of time that we have at home, because sometimes it happens that we believe that the other party in the discussion or in a classroom session, the students are just sitting at home. So we can do back-to-back sessions of hours and hours. But just like in a real classroom, there is a short break between each of the lectures. There should be a break, and we should respect the same time boundaries as we do in offline education. Using this, we should be able to maximize the benefit of the offline class. If on the other hand, we ignore these requirements and we just say, सामने वाला भी घर पे ही बैठा है, चलो एक के बाद एक घंटों लगा देते हैं. It gets very complicated because the other person may lose interest but not be able to express that. So we are all, I think, in this together to find out what is the exact, the finesse way of disseminating information. And as we find out the more idealized timelines, batch sizes, and develop tools accordingly, right? Like on right now, I can see Chenny sir, I can see Vignesh, I can see Dhruv, and I think Kanika's video is off. As we develop tools where you can see and interact with more people, maybe these numbers will change. So that's where we are.
Good afternoon, sir.
Kanika, now it's your turn. Yeah, please.
Yeah, my question is, students, those have completed their graduation, may have fear in their minds of a withdrawal of job offers from the corporate sector due to this situation.
So this is a real fear. I think lots of industries are looking at a downturn, and market players are rescinding job offers, which is very, very unfortunate. But the way to deal with that is, I think, that critical job functions are not being cut anywhere, right? So having skills that make us essential to the corporates that we have been given jobs from makes it easier for us to survive the pandemic without any economic downside. So making ourselves more essential, making ourselves more available to employers with specific requirements is the way forward. And while this is temporary, the job offers are being pulled back, in the next 6 months or so, the market will stabilize. And those students, if they are truly talented, will find another market, another industry, another corporate to be part of. Meanwhile, we have got Mr. Joshi's response. Thank you, Mr. Joshi. Very, very happy that you were satisfied with the answer. And I have received Vignesh's question on private chat. So Vignesh, really good question. What jobs we should be looking at right now are a lot of jobs in big data and data science. I think infectious disease is now being studied primarily with the help of big data. So finding a job in big data should be easier than before. Similarly, I think given that office locations worldwide have become unviable, and Vignesh, you can hear me, right? I can't see your face clearly. I hope I'm audible.
Vignesh? Vignesh, are you listening? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, Vignesh, along with the data science, and big data, which are going to be very critical to studying infectious disease, along with that, because office locations worldwide are now less viable, putting all of our applications and critical backbone of our IT on the cloud is very valuable. So, experts in cloud and migration of the offline and off cloud software to cloud software, along with all the applications, along with experts in virtualization, I think we'll see massive job spikes. So those are the sectors I admire.
So there is another question. The students who have no online facilities, how can they be teached?
This is a really complicated question because those students who can neither access offline learning nor online learning are caught in a very difficult scenario. Our belief is that anybody who has access to offline learning, which means they had a university campus they were visiting, will typically have online access also. Like 99% of people who have access to offline learning have access to online learning, while many more people have access to online learning than offline. So I think we are looking forward to a few things, such as, I don't know if anybody is aware, there is a program called Starlink, which has been started by Mr. Elon Musk, where they are creating a nexus of satellites which are circling the Earth orbiting the Earth at a very low altitude. Satellites are usually at 36,000 kilometers from the surface. This is only 550 kilometers from the surface. Right? Very low altitude satellites that are designed to create a network with very low latency across the world, a broadband, if you will. This is also being taken up individually by Mr. Richard Branson from the Virgin Group and other companies also. So, satellite-based broadband network system is very close in the future. We anticipate in the next 18 to 24 months. So, which is a very short timeline if you look at it from a global perspective. So, any students who don't have access to offline learning now should have access to a basic mobile phone that can connect to the internet and broadband available locally in the next 18 to 24 months. That's my forecast on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
And we
Arvind.
have a wonderful suggestion from Mr. Anmol, where he says TV channels can be used to teach them, which is very, very true, because right now a lot of channels, educational content is already available on television, especially on video on demand, such as your Amazon Prime and Netflix and all these channels. You can use those mediums to educate yourself, and then there are other opportunities as well.
Yeah, and just for your information, in Rajasthan is sign out. I think again there is some technical issue, so we are already ahead of time. So thank you very much. We are signing off. Thank you.